season of Talking Statamic. It's been nearly a year since we did season 1, so I'm delighted to finally be able to come back around and start off on season 2 here. Conveniently, just as Statamic has released its much anticipated version 6, not even quite 2 weeks ago, I don't think, is based on when we're recording this. So Kismet, that's great. And I'm really pleased to have Duncan McClean, one of the Statamic core team members, here on our show. So welcome to the show, Duncan.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
Yeah. To get us started, maybe you could introduce yourself to our viewers and our listeners. Give us a little bit about your background and how you came to be involved with Statamic in the first place.
Yeah, I'm Duncan. I've been at Statamic for about 2.5 years now. I've been doing stuff on the web for basically as long as I can actually remember. I think I started doing like basic web development stuff when I was like 6 or 7 or something like that, on like a page builder type thing.
Oh, yeah.
On some shared hosting. And then eventually graduated to using WordPress and building really badly designed themes for that, for my own little personal sites. And probably when I was about 15, 16, maybe a little bit younger than that, I was introduced to Laravel and to Statamic by a friend who used to live here in Glasgow. He knew Jack, so he introduced me to Jack. I got a nice free license for being like a kid, basically, which
nice.
was awesome. So I could just like play around with Statamic and things like that. I was asking some really like silly questions. I didn't really know PHP at the time. Like I learned PHP through learning Laravel, through learning Statamic.
Okay.
Because it's better than just doing it at the same time as learning everything else.
Yeah, for sure.
So I asked some really bad questions in the Statamic Slack at the time. And Aaron, of course, Aaron, he responded and was like, "Why are you doing it this way?"
Yeah. read the docs.
Yeah, exactly.
Classic.
I was like, I'm just a kid. I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, I was learning Statamic about that age while I was still in high school. I was learning Laravel as well. Built like a couple of little SaaS apps. One was a kind of sermon note-taking app, and then the other was like a little SaaS app that built that like converted like articles into a podcast, which is pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
And that's how I made the first internet money, basically.
Oh, very nice.
Which is awesome. So that was cool. I didn't make like a lot of money, but I think at its peak it was maybe making like £50 a month. But that's still like pretty decent for a college kid,
Yeah, that's the dream, isn't it? Right? Just making a little bit of money while you sleep.
Yeah, exactly. It was awesome. They were all like basically people I didn't know, which was fun. So yeah. And then obviously just like going back to where I am now, I worked in an agency when I came out of college, so just about at the start of COVID. I worked there for about 3.5 years, I think. An agency down in Southampton at the bottom of the UK. And then during that time I was building add-ons like Simple Commerce, like Runway, and I was contributing to Statamic, the core, and helping people out in the Discord and GitHub and triaging issues and that sort of thing. So I've been around, probably really active in Statamic since about 2019, 2020. Since about the V3 sort of era. So yeah, that's about how I got involved and that sort of thing. So
yeah, what was the catalyst for getting you in the door to be part of the core team?
Yeah, so actually Jack tried to hire me a couple of times.
Oh, nice.
He tried to hire me when a couple weeks after I actually started at my agency gig. But that wasn't like the right time. I just started.
Yeah.
It's like my parents were like, give it a chance. You've only just got one job. Don't go switching.
Yeah, then, I think that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it ended up being good advice as well, because I was probably like too junior to join at that point, really, like in terms of my knowledge and that sort of thing, and getting like actual work experience and that sort of thing.
Yeah, an agency job can be a great place to learn, kind of the whole stack a little bit, because sometimes, depending on the size of the agency, you have to wear multiple hats sometimes. So it's a great way to get a
Yeah.
sense of how full projects go and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So I think that's
exactly.
probably a good call before jumping over to something like Statamic.
Yeah, and I managed to introduce Atomic into that agency as well. They were previously using WordPress and Craft, but they started
Hmm.
building more and more sites in Statamic, which was nice. And then Jack tried to hire me a couple times. We chatted about like potentially doing support, that kind of thing, but never worked out. And then after Flat Camp, we kind of had a chat. The first Flat Camp back in 2023, I think it was.
Hmm.
We had a chat, and I ended up joining after that, which was cool. Yeah, and just started working away. I initially started working on some Statamic.com stuff,
Hmm.
um, building out a number of improvements there, and then made my way onto Core and opening PRs there and whatever, doing
Yeah.
a bunch of other stuff.
So you mentioned Runway. Is that one of your own projects? Because I know it's one of the what they call it the Rad Pack add-ons.
Yeah,
But was that something that of your own initiative?
yeah, yeah. So I built that. I can't remember when, but it was a while back, a couple, maybe 2021, 2022. I started building that. I originally built it. There was someone on Discord who was like, "Is there an easy way to make eloquent models that you've already got and like have listing tables and publish forms for that in the control panel?" Um, and I just like whipped up a quick prototype and published it basically. I was like, yeah, here you go. Here's a really simple add-on to do that. And then it grew from there. I never imagined how many people would actually end up using it, which is pretty cool. Um, and then when I joined Statamic, we sort of discussed whether to make Runway like a first party thing or whether to make it part of the Rad Pack, which is kind of like a second party type thing.
Hmm.
So it's built by third party developers, kind of, but it's if everything goes wrong and like all the third party developers leave, we would as a core team step in and like help maintain it and like that sort of thing. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it kind of morphed into being part of the Rad Pack when I joined, because it kind of made sense um, with how popular it is and stuff like that.
Is it largely still something that falls on your plate to maintain?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's basically the same as it was before. It's just I
Hmm.
now do it sort of on work time,
Right.
if you like, rather than doing
Well,
it
that's handy.
in my evenings and stuff. Yeah, it's handy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was having a look at your website and I see you list a bunch of your projects on there, and I see the number of installs for that is pushing 170,000, which is which
Yeah,
is a big
crazy,
number.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
for sure. With people coming to Statamic, do you see a lot of people reaching for something like Runway pretty quickly? Because I suppose there's a few different types of users for Statamic. They're building something maybe from scratch, and they're leaning on maybe just the flat file system, for a simple website, or maybe they're tacking it onto an existing Laravel project. Where do you see a project like Runway being most useful?
Yeah, so a lot of it's where folks are maybe using it. They've got a Statamic site, but they need some sort of eloquent functionality. They're already used to building eloquent for their normal like Laravel apps, and they just want a way of having like almost an admin panel for that in Statamic, so they don't need to use something like Filament or Laravel Nova or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
so they can have one single interface. A lot of people actually use it for the Eloquent driver doesn't let you have, it's only like one table for all your entries. And some people want like multiple tables without proper Eloquent models and things like that. So they use it
Hmm.
almost as a substitute for collections sometimes.
Okay.
So maybe they'll have their entries, their normal entries will be flat file, but they'll have some other stuff that actually sits in the database to
Mm.
make like querying and that sort of thing easier. Um, and also you can use it if you have like a package that you're using that uses eloquent models. It's quite handy. You can hook into there to be able to edit things and stuff, rather than using like again something like Filament or Nova.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty handy. Are there any other packages that I mean, we'll get to cargo later. It would be nice to talk about that in a little bit. But are there other things that you're involved with, maybe more broadly in the Laravel community?
To be honest, it's mostly just Statamic stuff. I haven't really released any like Laravel packages like they're not Statamic related.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, pretty much. I would like to do more like Laravel stuff, but I just haven't had the ideas or the time to like
Yeah,
build
yeah,
out packages there. So
for sure. Why don't we talk about version 6? It just came out not even 2 weeks ago now, and
yep,
I know that's been sort of a really big push for the better part of a year. I think you guys have been working really
yep.
hard on it. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what you think are the most exciting features or the big reasons to adopt Statamic now with version 6?
Yeah. So one of the big things we did, or probably the biggest change we did, was redesign the control panel. Which at a surface level is like, oh yeah, you redesigned the control panel, awesome. But we
Hmm.
also built out UI components, which I think are really cool. Which
Yeah.
basically previously in V5 you kind of had to like make sure you're using the right classes that we use, that Statamic used on its own in its views and things like that. And sometimes we would change something and then the class would disappear, and then you'd be
Yeah.
lost with like a broken thing in your add-on. Um, so now we have these like UI components for things like listings and buttons and tables and all that sort of thing, where you can just like use the component, import it, and you just don't need to worry about the design of it. We will worry about the design. It's all maintained on our side.
Hmm.
You can just like get on with actually building the functionality for your add-on, which is really nice. You don't need to worry about the classes disappearing, and so that's one of the big things. And there's some cool stuff we did around that. Um, I don't want to get too technical, but internally, just around how that works, because it's actually we have like a Vite package
Hmm.
that lets you use that lets you use those components without actually importing them into your add-on, which is cool. Um, some other big things. We moved to inertia, which is also probably something
Oh,
that
okay.
only some people will know what that is, but it basically allows us to have a kind of SPA light transitions
Hmm.
between pages and things like that, which makes things a little bit faster um, and just overall smoother. There's no like full page reloads between pages, which is really nice. If you know inertia, then you probably know how it all works, which is awesome. You can continue if you have blade views from V5. You can continue using those blade views as well. It'll just like work, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. That's not something you can do out the box with inertia, so that's awesome.
I suppose in that scenario, you might be limited if you're not using the new UI library. Is there something that Blade can take advantage of there, or
Yeah, so you can actually use all the UI components in Blade if you want to.
okay?
You don't import them. You use like a prefix. So you do like UI dash button or whatever, and then it'll just work. Basically, you don't have to.
Oh, great.
Um, you can do that in Vue as well, or you can import stuff like you would normally do with other libraries, which is quite nice. There's some other quality of life improvements as well we've made. Things like two-factor authentication. We basically merged in um, the two-factor package or add-on by Mighty Digital, which is pretty cool. Mighty Digital
Yeah.
in Australia. So they had a nice two-factor package, so we can merge that into Core. We added support for things like passkeys as well. And we made a bunch of other like little quality of life improvements as well, just around everything basically. So many things to list.
Right on. And you guys are iterating pretty quickly on fixes, even still. I mean, we're just a couple
Yep.
weeks into version 6, but we're already at 6.2.3 or something as of today. I mean, you guys are
Yep.
just crushing bugs so quick, which is great to see. Um,
Yeah.
is there anything with version 6 in particular that you think is going to move the needle, in terms of adoption of Statamic more? Or would you say it's more generally about awareness? People coming out of different platforms, WordPress or wherever.
I don't know about like awareness or whatever, but we have introduced like Laravel Boost guidelines so that you can
Mm,
because Statamic is a flat file CMS. Obviously everything's in files, which is really good for AI. So if you can just ask Claude, here are all my files, they're all in the content folder, just go and like edit them, go and edit the blueprints, that kind of thing. And our Laravel Boost guidelines basically give more guidance to Claude
Hmm.
or Cursor to tell them basically how Static works, as well as doing some sort of AI improvements around the docs so that they can actually read the docs while trying to save you some precious tokens as well. So that's kind of hopefully making the AI thing easier for developers building sites with Static, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. I know for me, AI has been super easy to use because of the whole flat file system, right?
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't have to work too hard to find all the information that it's looking for, which is
Yeah.
really, really fantastic.
Yep.
Maybe we could talk a little bit now and let's pivot a little bit, and we'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
simple commerce and cargo. Are these treated in the same way as the Rad Pack, where it's sort of like a second party kind of thing, or is it just your own initiative?
Yeah. So Simple Commerce and Cargo are both mine. They're not part of the Red Pack or anything.
So I understand that you've been working on cargo sort of in parallel with version 6 to come out around the same time. Have you seen much adoption with that new version of your commerce add-on?
Yeah, so I actually released an alpha close to Static 6, the Static 6 alpha back in August. And there's actually a couple of sites running in production with it right now.
Oh,
I
wow.
think there's three or four, and I know there's a couple more in development as well, and people migrating from Simple Commerce as well,
Hmm.
which is really cool. And it's cool. There's also like people helping other people in terms of like GitHub discussions and things, which is really nice. It's not all me, um, but yeah, it's really good to see
Fantastic.
that.
How would you describe the success of simple commerce? I mean, before we even got into cargo, in terms of adoption, did it see a lot of use?
Um, yeah, I actually got a lot of sales and things like that. So I started working on it back when I was in college, I think,
Hmm.
when Static 3 was still in like a private alpha. Um, and I initially was building it as just like a learning project, right? How does Static
Yeah.
work internally? How can you build an add-on? That kind of thing. I was like, what's the easiest thing in the world that I can build? Obviously, an e-commerce add-on.
Obviously,
Um,
that's the easiest thing you could do.
obviously, yeah. Um, so I started working on that. There was a couple of iterations before I properly launched it,
Hmm.
um, and then it just sort of went from there. It was probably about, I don't know how quickly you want to go into this, but it was probably about the end of 2023 that I started. There were some things with Simple Commerce that weren't quite as easy uh, as I wanted them to be, and didn't quite work the way I wanted them to be. Um, and I sort of started working on a little bit of a refactor, a rebuild,
Yep.
and that after about a year and a half turned into what is now Cargo. It took a long time, but
Yeah. So what would you say are the major differences? Is it a user experience for someone using the e-commerce site with it, or is it more under the hood?
yeah, there is a lot of under the hood stuff. So Simple Commerce stored carts and orders as entries.
Okay.
Um, and I actually also used Runway if you wanted to use it in a database. Um,
So it didn't require
that's
a
now
database?
no, it didn't require a database, and Cargo still doesn't. You can still use it flat file, but now it uses behind the scenes. It uses its own like stash store
Okay.
instead of like being entries, which gives you a little bit, which gives me a little bit more flexibility over how they work. We don't need to like work around like how entries work, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
Things like published the published state, things like technically they can have URLs and all this kind of thing, which is kind of weird. Yeah, so Cargo, along with doing a lot of behind the scenes work in terms of changing how data is stored to make it a little bit more reliable and things like that. I've also built a bunch of new features, so things like a pre-built checkout page, which basically lets you not have to worry about building your own checkout flow. You can just publish
Hmm.
it during the install process, and you just get a fully functioning checkout flow. You can customize as much or as little of it as you want, because you own the views, you own the antlers, um, the Alpine code, which is nice. Um, Things like discounting has been improved in comparison to simple commerce, which is really nice. So you could previously only do like coupon code discounts, but now you can do like global site-wide discounts where they're automatically applied as long as like certain conditions are met,
Mm.
which is really helpful for a lot of sites. I got that request a couple of times with Simple Commerce. Let's see what else is different. Customers are now Statimic users. So before
Okay.
in Simple Commerce, it was kind of a bit awkward because customers could be stored either as entries by default, or they could be stored as users, or they could be stored as users but stored in Eloquent, or they could be
Okay.
stored in a database. So there's just like so many, or they could be stored as entries in a database using the Eloquent driver. So there's
Yeah.
like just like so many ways you could store it. So now they're just always customers, which makes things so much easier, not only from my perspective but also hopefully from developers' perspective. Makes things like logging in customers and that sort of thing much easier.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if they're treated as users in the Statamic system, then they can log in and see their order history and all that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
absolutely. Yep, makes that really easy. There's a tag for viewing customer orders and stuff, which makes it really easy to do that.
Very cool. What would you say is the use case for people using something like Cargo versus like a Shopify integration?
Yeah, probably the biggest reason is that you want it all to be in one place. So with like the Shopify, I think there's a Radpack Shopify add-on, and with
Mm-hmm.
that, you have like most of your website is in Statamic, but then like the cart and the checkout page and everything that's in Shopify. There are
Right.
limitations with that, especially around if you want to use like Shopify apps. A lot of them require to be like installed onto your storefront, which obviously you can't do because you're using Shopify headless.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a reason you might want to use Cargo would be you want it all to be in one place. You want all your orders in the same place that you manage the products. You want, the proper content management for those products, alongside your pages and all that sort of thing. That's probably the biggest reason I can think of. You'd want to do it that way. It's also cheaper at the end of the day because you can build functionality onto it. You don't need to rely on third-party apps.
Mm-hmm.
In order to build like functionality. So those are probably the biggest reasons I can think of.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about maybe trying Shopify for building something for my wife, who's an artist. The minimum requirements and that sort of thing, but there is that ongoing monthly fees and but maybe this would be a better alternative if there's one-time price and maybe an um,
Yep.
annual fee for updates and that sort of thing. But I like the idea of having everything in one place. So I think this is something I'll probably want to check out for that, I think. So especially because
Nice.
I've built her website in Statamic already, so maybe this would be a great way to explore
Yeah.
that tool.
Yeah. Sounds good. Let me know if you have any questions when you get to it.
Yeah, absolutely, will do. Um, I think we're getting close to the end here. I'd love to ask you, you've been doing web development and stuff for a while. Are there any like hot takes that you have, any sort of unpopular opinions, contrarian points of view? I know, for example, not that this is like a contrarian thing, but I love going to Laracon and seeing Taylor get up there and he's just like in Sublime Text and like, right. He's not using PHP Storm. He's not using VS Code or like any of this stuff. He just like, nope, keep it simple. For whatever reasons he's got. What about you?
Yeah, for me, I think it would be avoiding code comments. Might be
Oh, okay.
controversial, but if the code is the code should be readable. Like if you're rather than having to write code comments, you should be able to read the code with clear variable names and clear like logic, that you don't need comments. I'm not saying no comments ever. Sometimes there's like
Mhm.
complicated things you need to do where you're like, yeah, I actually need to comment here for more context or whatever. But 90% of the time, I don't think you need comments
Okay. Yeah.
next to your code. That might be controversial.
Yeah, I could see that being controversial. I've got some friends in my circles who are the same, and I don't know. We have some fun debates about it once in a while. So cool. Right on. Do you have any shameless plugs or any of your, where can we find some of these products that you've been building on that you want to highlight for us?
Yeah, so go buy Cargo if you're looking for an e-commerce add-on for Statamic. It's really good. I actually feel like it's much more stable than Simple Commerce if you used that in the past. So I'm really happy with it. And yeah, you can check that out in the Statamic Marketplace along with all of my other add-ons. You can find me on GitHub, Twitter, Blue Sky, although I don't really post that much on there. Where else? Yeah, those are my main ones: GitHub, Twitter, and Blue Sky. Oh, and LinkedIn as well. If you use LinkedIn,
Right on.
which it seems to be better for engagement and stuff like that as well than Twitter, which is interesting.
Yeah, it can be. Which is super interesting for sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll make sure we get all those links in the show notes. So thanks, Duncan. Really appreciate your time joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great being here.
All right. So thanks everybody watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. You can find it at talkingstatamic.com, and you'll find all those links for Duncan stuff in the show notes as well. Also, don't forget to check out my other YouTube channel if you're watching this online for WordPress to Statamic. It's called From WordPress to Statamic. You can find that on YouTube. And also my own starter kit, which is called Cascadia. You can find that on the Statamic Marketplace for sale as well. And again, links will be in the show notes. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes in season 2. Very excited to have some more really awesome guests coming our way. So catch you next time.